So this project, I'm going to teach you how to make the picnic basket. Now it's actually quite a simple basket because you've got one outer wrap concealing one hidden box. Just a little bit unusual, and it's where we really use the advantages of the full length of the A3 scoring. And we're actually going to start by doing the outer wrap first, which is all done as one piece. So you can see here, the outer part is all one piece, and that is made from one full sheet of A3 card. So I've got my A3 card, and what I've done is I've cut 1 1/4 inches from the end of the card. So this actually ends up at 15 1/4 by 11 3/4. Okay, now I'm working on the inches side of the board, and I'm going to score on box lid. Now the easiest way for you to think about it, if you're sitting like I am, always have the handle at the top. Box lid will always be your natural score line to the left. Okay, so I'm going to start first of all, and I'm going to place the shorter edge against the rest here. Make sure you hold it tight, and what we're going to do, we're going to read along, and the first score line is going to be 2.5 inches all the way down, and then the second score line is 5, so that's 3, 4, 5 and 1/8, so it's 5 and one of the little lines beyond it. Now notice I'm scoring once forward, once backwards. It's better not to apply too much pressure and go over multiple times because you'll avoid cracking your card. Turn right around, so we're working on the opposite edge, and then do the same again. So we're going in first of all at 2.5 inches. And then next we're going at 5 and 1/8, and that little 1/8 is just going to give you the little bit of wiggle room so that when it all folds round, it's nice and slack and comes together, as opposed to you having to force the card together. Now, on the two long sides, I'm again going to place up against the butting edge, and this time we're going to score at 2.5 inches all the way down the cardstock. And these are going to create our flaps. Turn right around, do the same again at 2.5 inches all the way down. Now don't ever be tempted to think, oh, I'll just butt it against the other side and read in 2.5 inches, because remember your other side is your box base. So always use the true measuring line. So I've done 2.5 inches from both sides. Now I am going to use the box base here, because what I'm going to do is I am going to rest up against that side rest. I'm going to come in from 2.5 inches at the side, which will be a little bit further on than where this 2.5 inches is, and just score the centre panel. Okay, just makes it a slightly bit smaller. Turn it right around, butting against the edge. Again, 2.5 inches. The 2.5 inch line will be roughly the same place, but a tiny little bit further in, and it's that tiny little bit that actually always makes your box base work, but in this case we're using it for a different measurement. So that is all of your scoring done, and now what we're going to do is we're going to cut away some of the panels. So just using a sharp pair of scissors in the centre panels, I'm going to cut into the centre where we have the central score line, and then I'm going to cut this away from that score line. Now you might prefer to work with a craft knife. They always call me Sarah Scissor Hands in the office. I find scissors easier to work with, but it's whatever is your personal preference. People often ask me about which score line is, whereabouts on the score line do you cut? Now what I always say is if you cut right up the middle of the score line, you get the most accurate finish, and it is the neater of all of the options as well, as opposed to cutting slightly down the left or slightly down the right. But again, that's my personal preference, how I do it. You might find your own way, okay? So those are the two centre panels cut away. Then what I'm going to do is at the sides here, I'm going to cut up the centre of the score line, and then from the end panel, I'm just going to cut a little V, okay? So the same here, I'm cutting up the centre of the score line, and then from the end panel, cutting a small V. And then do the same on the bottom two sides, because if you think this is actually a mirror image, this is identical all the way around, okay? Then, now it's up to you if you want to use, you could either use a corner rounder or you could just by eye. I find this is really neat just to trim round and even off those corners. And if I bring in the one that I've actually done, and I've folded and burnished all these crease lines here, what I've done is I've rounded off all of these corners just to make it look that little bit neater. Now, if I pop the board out of the way for just a second, bring in my craft mat. You need to fold and burnish all of these crease lines. So burnishing is when you rub over with the side of the tool, and it just gives you a nice crease line. And this is our Centura Pearl card that I'm using, so you can see we're getting no cracking along those crease lines at all. Okay, now fold and burnish the side ones up, and this is going to be ready now to assemble. Now, as I always say with any boxes, if you are assembling, the best thing to use is a wet glue. For the purposes of my demonstrations, because I have to do it quite quickly, I use our tape pens. Now, actually, these are engineered to be strong enough to hold a box. So if you are ever going to use a tape pen, this is the one to use for boxes. I wouldn't advocate using any others. Now, these panels on the edge are going to fold inside. So I'm just putting glue all the way around the outside. Okay, plenty of glue on. Don't be scrimping on the glue here. Now, some little tips when you are doing your boxes. Did you notice how I just held that with my thumb in place there, which I'll show you again here? So I just held that to get the top lines to measure up perfectly, so that when you're looking inside of the box here, you can see these are totally flush together. If you make sure those lines are flush, naturally the corner will fall in at 90 degrees. So you don't need to worry about getting the corner at 90 degrees. You get these lines flush and your corner will follow naturally. I'll show you that again on this side. So glue all the way around the outsides, all four corners and plenty in the centre, and then just popping your finger or your thumb up against the top and ensuring they're flush at both sides. Now, if you want, you can open it out, just give it a good little rub there. And if you do that, the friction that your finger causes is going to help the glue to adhere a little bit better. That's only if you're using a tape pen. Now, you can see how that's the outer wrap of our picnic basket. So all we need to do now is create the central piece. So I put the outer wrap to one side, bring the board back in, again working on the inches side. This time I'm working with cardstock. Now, I've cut this from a sheet of A3 to start with to 9 7/8 by 11.5 inches. So that's 9 7/8 by 11.5 long, and you will need to cut this from an A3 base, or you could cut it from 12 by 12. Now, we're using the box base side of the lid this time because the box base side is engineered to make your inside a little bit smaller, which is exactly what we need for the picnic basket. Now, in the same way that the box lid works, you would rest against the left and read along the top. With the box base, you rest against the right and read along the bottom. So I'm going to score at 2.5 inches, so 1, 2.5 inches. And I'm going to do that on all four sides. Again, just take the board out because we've done all of our scoring now. And you're just going to fold and burnish these creases. And I find it easier to fold and burnish before I do my cutting because it just speeds it up a little bit. And then what we're doing is we're cutting up the centre of the score line again to the point of intersection, and then cutting out a small notch. Okay, and you're just rotating the card and doing that on all four sides. Now, I find if I rotate the card and always cut the bottom right hand corner, then what you do is you create strength on all four corners. You're not creating two sides stronger than the other. For example, sometimes people cut both sides in and then wrap them round. By doing one and rotating all the way, when you do it, you're going to get extra strength equally across all four corners. Now, to glue all the corners, just as you saw me doing earlier, again using the tape pen, we're putting the glue on the quartered side, and I'm going around all four edges. Because this is a large box, you want to make sure you have plenty of glue on here. Okay, and it is worth, I know I look like I'm doing this quite fast, but remember I do this for a living. You want to take plenty of time to make sure that you get that adhesive right up to the very, very edge on each one of these corners. So just again, I'm using that lead finger now to line up all the corners. And again, like I said before, if you get these lined up, naturally all of the insides will follow. So this is what I was saying about having strength across all 4 corners here, because we're doing equal corners. Now, we bring that in, that should, if you followed all the measurements right, sit perfectly inside here. Now, just to give myself a little bit of breathing room, I'm going to use the tacky glue here to stick this down. And the tacky glue really does what it says on the tin, it tacks straight away. So when you're working on projects like this, it's nice and strong, but also because it's got that instant tack, it means you can start working very quickly. So I've just put a good helping of tacky glue on there. I'm going to position my base in place, and I've got time just to manoeuvre that and make sure it is central to that part of the box there. Just sweeping up any extras. And what we should find is this should just close perfectly around it. Now, for the handles, all I've done is I've taken some pieces here. So can you see the handles are going to be running from here round to here, okay? So all I've done is I've taken some little brads. I'm going to use a pokey tool, and I'm going to pop make sure it's lined up in the centre. Poke right through, and then just hold it in place with a brad. And then to hold the whole thing together, I've just got here, I've put one of my double-sided pieces of Velcro, just some tape pen on this side. So you can just see that is going to lie over the front. Just going to make sure that side's stuck down. And then the same with this side. So you can see that's how to do the basic construction of the picnic box. But if I bring in again the one that I've decorated, this has just been done with printed cardstock. And I think they look fabulous. It's lovely, that basket weave finish one.